it's just about 6 o'clock here on the West Coast, so I'm going to go ahead and get started in the event that some folks need a little bit of time to get their audio and their video set up correctly. But my name is Mike Howe, as it says on the screen, and joining me on the East Coast, I believe in Vermont, is James Vladica, and this is my first time doing a webinar for Navionics, so had to work a few bugs out of things, but I think we got everything. I think we're broadcasting okay. So, Jamie, I want to thank you for coming and helping me out and holding my hand through this. I had you muted, so.
Yeah, anytime, brother.
I've got a few things to sort out here as well, but this is going to be a pretty simple presentation here tonight. PowerPoint program that I shared at the St. Paul Ice Fishing Show back in December, almost last, but it's already February. So but basically, I'm going to cover some of the great fishing opportunities we have out here in the West Coast. Certainly not going to touch on. I'm going to touch on a very small portion of them. But anybody that has any questions, I'm not sure exactly how that works. If you can email them in, I believe there's a panel when if you have a question, you can type in. But that's why we got Jamie here to help me sort this out. So again, welcome everybody, and we're going to go ahead and get started with the PowerPoint. So space bar is going to work here. I guess I got to click on it. There we go. So Western ice fishing destinations. Again, Mike Howe, housefishing.com out here in the Flathead, Western Montana. And certainly there'll be some more contact info at the end of this program where you can get a hold of us. You can reach me on Facebook or through here, I'm sure. So if you have any questions after the fact, happy to answer them. So this is an enhanced presentation of a seminar I gave at the St. Paul Ice Show in December. Like I said, things we'll be discussing today: Fort Peck over in eastern Montana, probably the one fishery I'm most excited about to talk to everybody about. Just got back from a trip there last week. Phenomenal fishery. Going to tell you quite a bit about that. Going to talk a little bit about the Flathead Valley here around Glacier National Park, my home waters. And then we're going to go down the Lake Cascade, down north of Boise, Idaho. In fact, I'm getting ready to go down there, leaving tomorrow, in fact, to go down and get ready to host one of our Perch Assault tournaments down there. And then lastly, I'm going to talk a little bit about Hebgen Lake in West Yellowstone, Montana. That's the westernmost swing of the NAIFC circuit. We just got done with the tournament down there a couple of weeks ago. So basically the things I'm going to hit on tonight, and you know, there's a lot more that goes into this. So first off, welcome to Montana. Whether you're joining us from in-state or out of state, as far away as the East Coast or nearby on the West Coast, Montana is an incredible fishing state. You know, most people, when they think about Montana, immediately the picture that comes to mind is a fella standing in a trout stream with a fly rod. And a lot of people don't realize that certainly up here in my corner of the state, we have over 400 fishable lakes just in western Montana alone. So the Spanish word Montana in Spanish means mountains, but for me, it's always been all about the water here. So who does this? Who comes out to Montana and does a ice fishing swing? Quite a few more people than you might think, and certainly something we're working on, that I'm working on as a guide and as a member of the ice team. Want to you know, make sure that people understand that there is some great ice fishing opportunities here in the Rocky Mountains. So these lakes and these places that I'm talking about tonight, you know, granted, to do a full loop to all of these areas for just about anybody is going to be a 2 to 3 week trip to cover these places and spend enough times there, have travel time and that sort of thing. But a lot of people have some sort of connection out here to somebody in the West and somebody in Montana. So certainly not too hard to justify a visit to a couple of these places. And why do you even want to? You know, the scenery that we have out here, second to none. Maybe it's a new species of fish that you're after. Maybe it's a bucket list trip that you've been thinking about for quite some time. A change of pace. If you're from the Ice Belt, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, the Dakotas, just a change of pace to get out here, have some mountains in the background, and really to have just unpressured and unfished waters. I mean, our lakes around here, you just do not feel like you are crowded at any time. Maybe you're going to do it in conjunction with a ski trip, a visit to the national parks. There's a lot of reasons why you want to come out to Montana and experience some of our ice fishing. Again, we're talking about Big Sky Country. A couple friends of mine here, Tyler George, and actually Harry Marvin, a fellow East Coaster from upstate New York, who grew up back there just like I did. So you guys are on today. I told you this picture pops up in a lot of different places. So let's look at the big picture, where we're going to focus today. This is a map of Montana and Idaho and the Dakotas, courtesy of Navionics. And we're going to start in the center of the screen, the red circle up there in the upper center of the screen, where I've got the red circle drawn. That is Fort Peck Reservoir. And that's where we're going to start off this evening. So starting off with Fort Peck, it is the 5th largest man-made lake in the U.S. And at one time, it boasted the largest hydraulically filled dam in the world, and it's been surpassed since then. 1,520 miles of shoreline, over 245,000 acres of surface water, 134 miles long, hosting 46 species. We'll look at those species here in the next slide. What you can expect ice fishing in Fort Peck is you could reasonably expect to catch walleyes from 9 to 14 pounds. Certainly going to get smaller, and there's always the opportunity for bigger. When we talk about trophy walleye in Fort Peck, that's basically what we're talking about. Northern pike up to 40 inches. We averaged on a 3-day trip with about 30 northerns caught, a 10-pound, 35-inch average. And we pushed in the 40 inches, and then the very next day we got one 43 and change. Lake trout up to 20 pounds, again, certainly don't surprise anyone, but a good average on lake trout in Fort Peck is going to be in that 6 to 8 pound range in that area. The cool thing about Fort Peck, and I'm going to talk about this again a little bit later on, is we are allowed as anglers 6 lines per person. And that can be a combination of spearing, tip-ups, and tip-ups are considered set lines. When you walk away from them and are no longer actively attending them, they're considered a set line, and you can leave set lines in for 24 hours. And then also jigging. And the cool thing about the tip-ups is we leave our sets out pretty much all night long. We use a variety of devices to help try and keep them from freezing in, but they're going to freeze in. But your day typically starts, seeing a flag and going and landing a fish. So that's pretty darn cool. So the fish of Fort Peck Lake, there is an abundance of Cisco or lake herring, as they're known in a lot of places. And that is the main forage base for all of these predator fish. The program to keep the Cisco, I mean, they do net counts. They want to make sure that their forage base is solid year in and year out. Then we have the predator fish, from lake trout to northern pike, Chinook salmon, walleye, sauger, smallmouth bass, hybrid saug eyes. There are crappie, there are yellow perch, there are goldeye, there are paddlefish and ling, or burbot, or eel pout as they're called in the Midwest. So, but our main fish that we feature in Fort Peck and that we typically target are the big 3, lake trout, northern pike, and walleye, and then of course the Chinook salmon. And we have a very unique opportunity for Chinook salmon, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. So just a picture standing at the dam. The dam is about 6 miles long, so quite a engineering feat to speak of, and certainly just a huge body of water. You never feel crowded on Fort Peck. So as I touched on a little bit earlier, the methods of fishing Fort Peck, again, 6 lines per angler. Tip-ups is probably the most popular option. 5 tip-ups and a jigging rod, or maybe you're sitting in a spear shack and you've got 5 tip-ups set out as well. Set lines, again, anytime you walk away from an attended line, it's considered a set line, very simple. For spearing, we can spear the lake trout, we can spear northern pike, walleye, and salmon. And salmon we have a structured season on salmon, basically December 31st to, I believe, the 30th of March, if I'm not mistaken. But we do have an opportunity to spear a Chinook salmon. Now, that's something that you will have to work very hard at to get to the right areas and be very, very patient, but it is a possibility. And then lastly, jigging on massive main lake structure. There are so many arms and bays and main lake points and secondary points and points off of points that you could fish Fort Peck all your life and never fish the same structure twice and not put a dent in it, as you'll see on some of the maps that we're going to have up here shortly. So Jason Mitchell, one of the clam and ice team pros, very famous angler out here in the ice belt. Fort Peck is probably Jason's favorite lakes, certainly in his top 3. And when it comes to lake trout, I don't think he'd argue that in the lower 48 that it is his favorite. So Jason spends a lot of time there. You've seen his videos, seen his TV show. You've seen him fishing Fort Peck open water as well as ice. This is one of my guides out on Fort Peck, Eddie Mint. He owns the Lakeridge Lodging and Bait Shop, which is a very unique situation in that it is close. It is right off of paved roads. You do not have to travel. Some of the roads to access the water on Fort Peck are 40 to 100 miles long across just the wide open prairie, shortgrass prairie, to get to an access to get to the lake. And we're very blessed to have this resource right in the town of Fort Peck with lodging and bait and gas and food and access in minutes from the lodge. So Eddie's holding a real average northern pike there, 35, 36-inch fish, all of them chunky. So again, Lakeridge Lodging and Bait Shop, again, right in Fort Peck. We offer everything out of there from fully guided to just a nudge in the right direction. And that's situated in the northeast part of the lake. We focus primarily on Duck Creek, the marina, the dam area right off the face of the dam, Bear Creek, Rock Creek, the Pines. If you study a map of Fort Peck, all those places will jump out at you. So let's get to the map. This is a Navionics webinar, and so I wanted to make sure that I included some of the tools that we use every time we are out on Fort Peck. And as you can see, this is an area here, maybe, oh gosh, not even 15 miles, well, maybe 20 miles wide and 15 miles east to west as we're looking at it. But you're looking at the Bear Creek area, one of the dry arms, the structure everywhere. That highlighted in yellow is actually the face of the dam. The highlighted in green is the marina where we typically fish around. And then the places that are circled just to kind of give you an idea of the tremendous changes in depth, all of the shoreline structure, the bays, the creek arms that come in. I mean, it is just a body of water unlike many others, certainly in the lower 48. So as I mentioned a little while ago, the opportunity to catch a Chinook salmon through the ice. This is a local angler who does very well out there, and this is a jigging fish, not a spearing fish. But the Chinook salmon in Fort Peck and in the Missouri River, there's some reservoirs in the Dakotas that have done this. These are planted fish, landlocked fish. They take their eggs in the spring, and then they false spawn them in the fall. I'm sorry, I got that backwards. Take their eggs and then they false spawn them, and then in the fall they come back to where they where they were initially released, where the fingerlings were released. And even though they're not coming back in there to spawn, their natural instincts just take them back in there. And there's actually a snagging season on Chinook salmon there in Fort Peck, where they do all of these operations. And that's kind of a thrill as well. But that is perfectly legal. There is a snagging season for Chinook salmon. And, imagine snagging a 25-pound king salmon on fairly light tackle. It is something that people go and have done for several decades now. There's a real nice representation of a Fort Peck walleye caught through the ice. That's probably a 8 to 10 pound class fish there. They get those big humps on their heads, and they are just a phenomenal fish. And we like to encourage folks, the reason we have an abundance of big fish on Fort Peck is because most of the people that fish this lake respect the resource and release anything in that 22-inch and up range. You typically have no problem finding really nice 3 to 4, 5 pound eater sized walleye in that 16 to 18-inch class. There's a picture of a smallmouth bass that caught me by surprise a couple years ago, and very large smallmouth bass. That one was just over 5 pounds on a handheld scale, and tremendous sport any time of the year, but certainly through the ice as well. And then this is a picture of a group of guys from Minnesota that just came out and fished with us last week on a guided trip. This is one morning's catch. This was our second day. We had a really good morning bite going on. And so that was a morning catch. Everybody got, we got walleye, we got northern pike, and we got lake trout in that picture. So like I was saying earlier, the pike average about 36 inches. That's what we were catching. There's just tons of them in there. Another nice fish caught from one of the guys from Minnesota. That was a fish on a tip up. And, you can jig up a lot of these big pike. You can get them on tip ups. The jaw jacker product, which is an automatic hook setting device, which you get to fight the fish on a rod and reel. So that the opportunities just are tremendous out there. A real nice representative if you want to eat some lake trout, great smoked. Like I said earlier, lake trout out to 20 pounds, tons of fish in that 4 to 8 pound class. So we're going to take off from here, but a couple other things that I want to say about Fort Peck. We are allowed to use live bait. And so we use anything from little 2-inch minnows, fathead minnows, to giant suckers and chubs. We use a lot of dead bait. We use smelt and herring. And so, you don't have to worry that if you can't get good live bait, although that's never a problem at the Lakeridge. Eddie makes sure he keeps bait stocked, well stocked all the time. But you don't have to, sometimes live bait is just a hassle to use. You have to keep it alive. You have to keep it fresh. If it's super cold out, you've got to keep it alive. Certainly dead bait is definitely something that, can be used to great effect out there. So now we're going to take off and we're going to head out west. And we are going, if you're looking at your screen, we're going to go to your left to where it has the other yellow circle and it says Ronan. And that big feature there that sticks out is Flathead Lake. Now, Flathead Lake is the largest natural freshwater lake west of the Mississippi. At almost 200 square miles of water, it is a giant body of water. So we affectionately call our area the Flathead. Glacier National Park, 3 million visitors in 2017. Certainly a case of loving it to death, but it's just an incredible natural resource, and it's really our crown jewel of Northwest Montana. In the wintertime, we've got skiing, both alpine, cross-country, backcountry, heli skiing. There's dog sledding, hundreds of miles of snowmobile trails, as well as backcountry riding. There's breweries, wineries, and distilleries, and of course, ice fishing. But you know, we don't do a lot of ice fishing on Flathead Lake. We typically, that lake rarely freezes. And if it does, it's ice that can change hourly. So, but as I mentioned earlier, over 400 lakes in our area, we always have an ice bite going on, typically from the mid part of December all the way into April, especially on the higher mountain lakes. 400 lakes in our region. The ones I'm going to mainly focus on and show you pictures and maps of: Flathead Lake, like I've been saying, Swan Lake, Whitefish Lake, McGregor Lake, Little Bitterroot Lake, the Thompson Chain of Lakes, and Echo Lake. Now, the Thompson Chain of Lakes consists of about 7 lakes, and just about any fish that swims in western Montana can be found there. So the big lakes are Flathead, Swan, Whitefish. McGregor's pretty good size. We fish for lake trout, rainbow trout, brown trout, cutthroat trout, perch, pike, bass, whitefish, kokanee, crappie, and then a couple of uniques or exotics in the grayling and the bull trout. And basically the Dolly Varden of Alaska is what we refer to as a bull trout. And the easiest way to think of it is a Dolly Varden is a sea run, and bull trout are basically freshwater. But it's the same fish. They're actually a char, not a trout. Same with the lake trout. And I always ask the question, well, what's missing from this list? And that's walleye. We do not have hardly any opportunities for walleye in the western part of Montana. They have done everything they can to keep the walleye on the east side of the Continental Divide. But if you're familiar at all with the Columbia River in the state of Washington, probably one of the premier large walleye river fisheries in the U.S., maybe in North America. I know that Gary Roach speaks about his Mr. Walleye. His 4 personal best walleye came out of the Columbia, I believe, in the 80s. And the recent Washington state record at a little over 20 pounds was one of the largest walleyes ever submitted for a record in close to 20 years. So, you know, walleye are in the western drainages. They're in Idaho. They're in Pend Oreille. But you know, this is trout country and you know, pristine trout country as well. Now, a couple of years ago, we did a TV show with Tom Grunwald Outdoors. We did a national contest. People had a chance to sign up and take a helicopter trip into some backcountry lakes with us. These are not typically lakes that we will hike into to ice fish, although we could. And depending on how deep the pockets are, helicopters are available to fly us into these high mountain lakes. This is a little lake just outside of Whitefish, Montana, Blanchard Lake. It's actually a low valley lake. There's crappie and bass and northern and perch in there, as well as some trout. Big Mountain ski resort in the background. Sorry, that's a Whitefish Mountain Resort. They asked us to quit calling it the Big Mountain, but it'll always be Big Mountain. And this area that we're looking at is in the northern part of the state. Glacier National Park is basically everywhere that says Glacier National Park. And then Flathead Lake down in the lower corner of that screen. So when we zoom in on Flathead Lake, we see that it is a deep water lake, lots of structure. Now, we did not have a good map of Flathead Lake. We had paper maps that were maybe 60-foot contours if we were lucky. And then in 2008, Navionics came out with the map chip of Flathead Lake, an HD version, which is 1-foot contours. And man, did it, the guys that guide and make their living on Flathead Lake or just fish it, it really rocked our world. And we have discovered things, we are still discovering things about Flathead Lake to this day, 10 years after we got our hands on that chip. But it's very deep. The east side trench, basically running down the center of the lake to the right side of the picture, is anywhere from 300 to 370 feet deep for about 15 miles. So huge body of water. We guide for lake trout, lake whitefish on that lake. But again, we don't do a whole lot of ice fishing. Some of the other lakes in the north end of the valley, I mentioned Whitefish Lake. Tally Lake in the left side of your screen is the deepest lake in Montana at a arguable 450 feet maximum depth. Unique thing about Tally Lake is, unlike most other lakes that have very rocky, uneven bottom structures, the bottom of that lake is flat as a pancake, like they graded it with a bulldozer before they filled it with water. But it is certainly a natural lake and very unique in that aspect. Blanchard Lake, lower right-hand side, Beaver Lake, Bootjack Lake, Murray, Woods, Little Beaver, all of those are good fishing lakes with a combination of trout and salmon and just about everything that swims around here. So taking a closer look at Whitefish Lake, again, another lake where lake trout were planted at the turn of the 20th century, along with the Lake Superior whitefish. Northern pike got in there. But again, giant, deep basin in the middle, 160 feet of water, but a lot of really good shoreline structure, deep bluffs, steep canyon sides that lakers can push that bait fish right up in there and really corral them in. So another really neat lake. Whitefish in the summer is very crowded with just boating traffic and skiing and that sort of thing. So we don't fish it much in the summer, but we really do enjoy fishing it in the winter. It's one of the better lakes for us to be able to go and ice fish large lake trout. We have several other lakes in the area, but the fish don't grow as big as they have the potential to in whitefish. So I'm going to go ahead and pause for a moment, and if anyone has a question they want to ask, I'm not sure how you do it because, again, I'm new to this webinar thing, but those of you that are experienced, if you want to ask a question, you can pop up on the video screen. There's James. I got to remember to unmute you, Jamie. There, I got you. Sorry.
There we go. So anyways, if you look down at the bottom, there's something that says chat down there. And it's basically a chat box. If you click on it, I actually went in there and I did ask a question to your panelists. I said, if anybody has a question for Mike, you can ask them here. So if they have any questions, they can ask those questions through here. And then we can see that and you can get back to them. So if you see the answers, then you can just answer them verbally back to them. So if anybody does have any questions, I encourage you just to go down to that chat and ask your question there. Mike or myself will see that. And if Mike is actually doing his presentation, he doesn't see it, I'll make sure that Mike knows that you guys got a question for him.
Perfect. I have it lit up now. So now I know how to go access it. I'm not seeing it at the bottom of my screen, probably because I'm the presenter, but
yep.
I found the other menu. All right, we'll go ahead and I'm going to keep moving forward here. So again, talked about Whitefish Lake, great picture of some Lake Superior whitefish. Now, when we talk about whitefish, we do have the mountain whitefish, which are very prevalent in our streams and rivers, but these are the Lake Superior whitefish that get up into the 8, 9, 10 pound range. I believe our state record is about 9 pounds. So we, in the early 20th century, 1905, I believe, somewhere around there, lake trout, Lake Superior whitefish, and yellow perch were brought out on what they called the fish trains from the Midwest to give fish that the folks that were moving west, settling west, were familiar with. And the main reason that the walleye didn't make it was I think they ate them all on the trains before they could get out here to western Montana because they were native to the Missouri system. But I think the reason they didn't get across the Rocky Mountains was everybody on the trains picked them out, cooked them up, and ate them. Just my theory. Shot from Whitefish Lake, again, some guys we guided a few years ago, and we didn't get into the big ones that day, but we did catch numbers of them. And just, you know, if you've ever caught a lake trout through the ice, it's a lot of sport. Little Bitterroot Lake, again, another unique lake to our area with a couple of unique species in it, namely the kokanee salmon, which is a landlocked sockeye. And I know there are some of those back in the East Coast as well as in the West. Just a great fish, very sporting. They don't grow super huge, but again, you match your tackle. It's kind of our panfish. I mean, I would say that kokanee in a lot of our lakes around here is very much like the bluegill is back in the Midwest and the East Coast. Just about every lake is stocked with them. They're a put and take fishery. So we catch quite a few of them. This lake, they did an experiment with a mysis shrimp back in the 60s. And the idea was to give the kokanee a forage that would make them grow big and strong. But they didn't know a whole lot about the mysis, and it kind of backfired on them. The shrimp eat the same plankton that the kokanee needs. So, but this lake, of the 6 or 7 that they planted the shrimp in, it actually benefited the kokanee. And we do get kokanee in Little Bitterroot Lake that have learned to key on those shrimp and grow quite large, 4 to 5 pounds. A 27-inch, just shy of 7 pounds, was caught a few years ago. And I caught several in the low 20s this spring while trolling. So that deep, deep basin, that 260 feet, those mysis shrimp suspend over deeper water, and they go very, very deep, and they look for a certain light level. And then as the sun goes down and the light level decreases, they come up off the bottom to feed on that plankton. And so the kokanee don't wait for them to come up, but these kokanee have adapted to those mysis, and they go deep and feed on them. And it's quite a challenge to fish on the bottom with a fairly light jig in 240 to 260 feet of water and actually feel that bite. But it's something that we do quite often, and it's just another unique way to fish. And then the Kamloops or Girard strain rainbow trout. This is a lake that those are planted in, and a Girard rainbow will grow into the mid 20 pound, well over 30 inches. You rarely land one through the ice, at least not one that's over 15 pounds. I put them on a par with a king salmon as far as the fight. We typically troll them in open water with planer boards and flies and shallow diving plugs. You hear a clicker go off and 300 feet of line is peeled before you can get the rod out of the holder. Just an incredible fishery. We have been known to hook into them through the ice, and every now and then somebody will land one, mostly if they're targeting them. And then in the wintertime during the ice fishing season, in that upper left-hand corner, that circle, that red circle up there is where we typically catch them through the ice. And these are some really nice kokanee salmon, a couple of 20 inchers in there. That's a great limit of salmon there. Just some great eating. They're great smoked. Again, like any salmon, you match your tackle to them, they're going to fight. Just an incredible fight. Little McGregor Lake, this is west of the Flathead Valley as you head towards Libby. Another very deep, narrow valley bottom lake, basically 2 lakes in one with a big hump in the middle of it. Very deep to the east with over 220 feet of water, 200 feet to the west. But you can see very similar structure to Whitefish Lake and Flathead Lake. Lake trout do thrive in here. Rainbow trout are known to be in here. And then an illegal planting of smallmouth bass has recently been in there. And McGregor Lake is really known for big crayfish. Big crayfish. People put traps out and enjoy getting those crayfish. And those smallmouth have taken advantage of that and are exploding in there. If you've ever heard the term bucket biology, pretty much has gotten its start here in, Montana, unfortunately. But that's people taking fish out of one body of water and planting them in another. A couple of Lakers from out there at McGregor. Again, we fish these fairly deep. A lot of times we're fishing over 100 feet of water, but there's a lot of lake trout in McGregor Lake, and great fishery at all times of the year. Very underutilized. It's not a very well-known fishery, but if you spend some time out there and figure it out, you can do quite well. And then the grayling, one of the exotic species that we fish for. We have a couple of lakes here in western Montana where native populations of grayling have been planted and tried to be restored. At one time, grayling were native to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and Wisconsin, and then but they are a pre-glacial fish. And then as the glaciers receded, they were left in just a couple of lakes in Montana. and it's you know, it's considered to be the sailfish of the north. You can see that very large dorsal fin, and it is a fighting fish through the ice or shallow water light tackle in the spring. So another fish, very unusual. Maybe it's a bucket list fish. We take people fishing all the time that are trying to check off a bunch of species of fish, and they need a cutthroat and a grayling, or a grayling and a bull trout, and we do our best to accommodate helping them check those squares off. And then lastly, in the Flathead Valley, we have a lot of Native American petroglyphs. And some of these are known to go back approximately 3,000 years. These were here before the white man came, and tell the story of the native tribes. And if you look closely at that photo on the left, you see an image of a person. A lot of times these drawing, and then down below there is some sort of a animal, a hooved animal, that perhaps it was a hunting party that went out, and that was their successful kill. Oops, I got to back up here. Somehow I hit the reverse button. Bear with me here. I did see somebody had a question pop in here. Let me see if I can get to that. Great question. Question is Navionics adding more of the lakes in Montana and Idaho, or are most of them already covered? Well, you know, they're constantly updating the options, as far as I'm aware. James, do you have something for me there? Or did I unmute you? Nope, I'm hoping my system ain't crashing here. Okay. But yes, every year it seems more and more lakes are added. The main thing with Navionics mapping applications is users, numbers of users. You know, Fort Peck, Flathead Lake, several other lakes in Montana, I believe Canyon Ferry, the high definition lakes. Most of the lakes in Montana are on the apps and in the charts, but they're not the HD maps. You know, HD maps are expensive to produce, and again, with so few users compared to lakes all over the rest of the country that see hundreds of thousands of user days every year, some of our lakes in Montana might not see 10,000 user days in a year. So I believe it's a matter of economics, and as more people request maps of lakes, we'll see more of those HD versions. But a lot of the maps in Montana are on the chips, but they're not the HD maps. They're the converted bathymetric maps of years past. So I hope that answered your question there, Steve. So again, lots of natural things here in the Flathead Valley, lots of reasons to come and visit besides just the ice fishing. All right, so then the next slide, I kind of gave you a quick preview of it. So we're on the road again. We are going to go to the lower left-hand side of the map that you're looking at there, and we are going to go visit a town just about an hour north of Boise, Idaho, where Lake Cascade, Idaho is. So been a lot of buzz about Cascade over the last 3-4 years due to some pictures of some huge trout, or huge perch, and nice trout, but huge perch coming out of there. And this is a western fishery that is managed for big perch, which is almost unheard of. As I mentioned earlier, the trout is the big deal around here, and you know, that's the thing, is it's the trout, nothing but the trout. But this reservoir in Cascade a few years back was a pretty good fishery, and it got really taken over by some trash fish. They tried some tiger muskie in there to control the pike minnow that was eating all the perch and the trout. Pike minnow really took it over. So anyway, they poisoned the lake out in the early 2000s. And what's really interesting is they went to 2 or 3 different states and got perch stock to replant into Cascade Lake. One of them being Lake Mary Ronan, about 25 miles down the road from me, where they looked at the types of water, alkaline levels, soil structures, altitudes, average temperatures, and they tried to find what they thought would be the best fish to replant in the Lake Cascade. At the same time, the state of Montana was doing everything they could do to get rid of the illegally planted perch in Lake Mary Ronan. And so it was quite a conundrum there. Why is our state wanting to kill these fish out of this lake that another state is willing to come and pay us for? So I thought that was quite interesting when I read about the history of Lake Cascade. But this is a lake that is being managed for giant trophy yellow perch. There are rainbow trout in there. There are some smallmouth bass in there. There are kokanee and coho salmon. But the main forage in this lake for these perch are other perch. This is where the world record yellow perch on a tip-up was caught about 2 or 3 years ago. You might remember seeing the picture of a cute young preteen young lady out on the ice with about a 2.5 pound perch that she caught on a tip-up, which is currently the world record for perch on a tip-up. Last year's netting survey showed that 59% of the perch in Lake Cascade are in that 12 to 15-inch class. The next biggest makeup is split right down the middle between the 16 to 17-inch fish and the smaller fish. Somebody's got their microphone unmuted. Hey. I think.
Okay. Sorry about that.
I think I might have dropped out.
Are you there?
I might have dropped out, Jamie. Let me log back in.
Okay, I can see you. I can see the screen and everything.
Okay, if you can see me, then let's see here. I am not seeing myself. I am seeing my screen. But if you can see me and you can hear me, then I just dropped out from my visual. But you still got me, James?
Yeah, I can see. You can ask the chat. Ask somebody in chat if you guys can hear. Can you guys still see Mike? I can see Mike. Make sure you guys can still see Mike.
Yep, see me and hear me. I may have.
Okay, somebody said yes, so you're all set there.
Excellent. I'll keep on going.
So real quick, before I dropped out, that question was, is there anybody going to be doing new mapping or any more mapping there in your lakes? I believe that was in Montana. And the answer is yes. There's constantly, every day, there's sonar chart updated. So anybody that's out there on the lake, even yourself, Mike, you could be doing that with your Vexilar sonar phone, or if you got your Lowrance or whatever it may be for your fish finder in the summertime. You can go out there on the lake and you can make these maps. You can actually update some of the stuff. Right now, for instance, Florida, we just had Irma going on down there, and it changed the coast. Well, all the maps, the paper maps, everything that's down there is irrelevant right now. So you have every charter boat captain that's down there right now, along with the Navionics crew and anybody that wants to volunteer down there remapping, so that way we can get that back up to quality and safe actual maps of what is right now, not what was before the storm. So the answer is yes, and there is multiple ways that you can do that. One of them is probably one of the cheapest ways is the Vexilar sonar phone. It's $150. It's a Wi-Fi, goes in the back of your boat or your kayak or anything. You can actually go with a paddleboard if you wanted to. You hook it onto your phone, you pull up the Navionics app, and you just go paddle around or go fishing, and that's going to be logging that sonar in the lake. So that's probably the cheapest way to do it. But if you have a, Ray Marine, your Humminbirds, any of those fish finders that you have, you can also record those sonar logs and upload them. And it doesn't cost anything to do it, and it helps everybody else out. And if you have certain lake there in Montana that may not be on the radar, or one of those private lakes you talked about earlier, flying into some of these lakes. Well, obviously getting maps of those lakes isn't going to be that easy, but if you're up there, you could bring this with you and that could be put on the map. So it's as simple as that. So to answer that question, that's probably the best way to go about that.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's not an app that I'm real familiar with, and I don't get a chance to use that much. I have tried it out. I've certainly seen lots of demonstrations, but that's great. Yeah, because you know, sometimes you just got to do things for yourself, and we're out there anyway. You start the recording, and then you can share that with everyone else.
Technology is grand. So I guess to touch that, if anybody is interested in that, you can go to our Navionics webinars, just where you'll find this video for anybody that wants to go back and rewatch this video of Mike or any of the other ones. There is a full database of some previous webinars that we have all done. And there's been things simple as drop shot bass fishing to running advanced electronics, and sonar charting is one of those. So that's something with a little Google search, you can go back and you can find that. So I'm going to go quiet here again and let you continue on with your presentation, but
awesome.
That helps.
Thanks, Jamie, very much. Okay,
yes,
so back to Cascade. You know, it is an incredible yellow perch fishery. The fish that are in there are just phenomenal size. If you can go to some of the Facebook pages, just Google Lake Cascade yellow perch, and you're going to see pictures of 16 and 17-inch perch. And we tell everybody, if you go down there and spend a couple days and do not catch a 2-pound-plus perch, then you really weren't trying. Many personal bests are caught out here every year. There are people out there probably just now getting off the ice that have probably caught a personal best yellow perch today. So let's look at some of the map for Lake Cascade. This map, the Navionics map of Lake Cascade, is spot on the money. I have used it open water as well as ice fishing, and I mean, it is dead nuts on. And you can see there's quite a bit of structure and quite a bit of variance. It's basically a reservoir, the old river channel running down through it, signified by the dotted line. But it's, you know, it was a valley bottom at one time with a river running through it, with lots of exposed shoreline. And so when you look at the map on the left, the big picture, for the yellow perch, we basically fish a very small area of that lake in the wintertime that I've got circled in red. And then when you look at the right-hand side, you can see where I've zoomed in on that structure and see that sharp break line. And that is where I would say the majority of the teams last year in our Perch Assault tournament focused their efforts, and some giant fish were caught out of there, to be sure. If you're interested in going down here, taking advantage of that, I encourage you to get a hold of me. I'll certainly point you in the right direction of people that you need to talk to down there. Tackle Tom's is a great tackle shop right there in Cascade. The Birch Glen Lodge and Motel is the lodging in town. But you have not, if you're a yellow perch angler, you have got to put Lake Cascade on your bucket list. A couple of the pictures on the left, that's Tia with the world record perch on a tip-up. Tia obviously knows how to hold a fish for a picture. And then on the right is the current Idaho state record perch at 2.96 pounds. I think that perch might have got run over with the four-wheeler before they realized that they had a state record on their hand and brought it in to get weighed. But you do see some really freak configurations of these fish out there. They have giant heads and big mouths because they're eating large perch fry. One of these fish comes up out of the hole, you feel like you could drop a golf ball in its mouth and tee off of it. A picture that I took last year with some friends that we were down there, several 2-pound-plus fish in that picture. And just like I said, it's a perch angler's dream. These are some fish that we weighed in at last year's tournament. That's a 2.2 or 2.3 pounder on that top picture. So incredible fishery. And then lastly, I'm going to discuss Hebgen Lake in West Yellowstone, Montana. If you've ever been out to West Yellowstone, you know what a gorgeous, beautiful, breathtaking place it is. And then the NAIFC has been holding a qualifier, national qualifier out there since 2012. And they get a great turnout, average of 70 teams. And then in 2017, West Yellowstone sweetened the pot with a $10,000 payout to the winning team. And those were the 6 winning fish. That was about a 14-pound average between 6 rainbow trout. Now, there are much bigger rainbow trout in that lake, but I believe that they all go up into the shallow arms during ice, and that is just not an area that's open during the tournament because it's pretty sketchy ice and lots of springs and thin ice up there. And they indeed wrote a $10,000 check. And my partner Jason Mundell and I were very, very lucky and very blessed to be able to win that tournament. So I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for West Yellowstone and Hebgen Lake. And we dropped 10 places a couple weeks ago when we were down there, took 11th place. But it's a great fishery. If you like tournament fishing, maybe you've wanted to fish in any IFC, clam is an ice team is a big part of the NAIFC and has been. It's a well-run circuit, and the fact that they come out to Montana, you can fish for trout instead of panfish. You can fish just outside one of the most beautiful national parks in the U.S. and stay and snowmobile and dog sled and explore Yellowstone Park in the winter. It is a phenomenal way to spend a week in western Montana. There's also some pretty nice brown trout down there, and it's known for its deep snow, as you can look in the tracks behind me. But I'll take deep snow over slush any day. But you know, if you're halfway skilled on riding a snowmobile, you can get pretty much anywhere on that lake. And then now that's about it. It's about time to go home. So ice fishing across the West can offer some of the most scenic places, low angler pressure, liberal limits. As we talked about on the perch, there's no limit on perch on Cascade. In fact, the biologists want to see almost twice as many perch being taken out of that lake, because we've got to kill some of them bigger ones for those little ones to have something to eat and continue to perpetuate and grow the species. Fort Peck, you're allowed 5 walleye, 3 lake trout, 5 chinook, and 10 pike daily on Fort Peck, and then you can double that for your possession. So just some of the reasons to come west. And I'm going to keep this open for some chat questions. You can certainly reach out to me through my webpage at housefishing.com. My email address is mike@housefishing.com. You can go to our Facebook page and ask any questions through there, or take down my phone number and just give me a call if you just have questions. If maybe you came in late and you missed something. I know we recorded this. I know it's going to be available on the Navionics website, so you'll be able to go back and look over it again. And lastly, the best advice I'm going to give you is go west, because it worked for Lewis and Clark. And if it wasn't for Lewis and Clark, I'd be a Canadian. So thanks for joining in tonight, everybody. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them via chat. Otherwise, thanks for stopping by.
Hey, Mike, just want to thank you for taking the time to do this for Navionics. We appreciate it. I appreciate you as a fellow ice teamer. And, you got a home out here in Vermont if you want to come out this way.
Well, I tried to hook up with you last spring, and it just didn't work out by a day. But
I know.
I'm kind of known for traveling during the ice season. Something wrong with me there. But one of these days you might see me with a short rod.
Well, you just gotta fly into Burlington, and we'll pick you up. You don't need any gear; we got plenty of that. So
I know you do. Appreciate the offer.